With my eyes closed, I could sense a large flash take place, and then the reverberation hit. And it didn't occur to me for a few seconds that it was an earthquake until about 10, 15 seconds later.
This is like a jackhammer was taking the whole house and shaking it up and down very violently.
I really didn't recognize it as an earthquake. It was so violent. I was thinking, you know, there was a bomb that went off or some truck ran into my house. It just seemed too violent.
Were scared. It was a very, very scary time. It looked like we'd been hit by a bomb. There were fires everywhere, down power poles.
Even driving home was like driving through a war zone. You know, the little fires, dogs running everywhere, brick walls knocked down, houses with damage.
It was a strong, hard, tough one. All the cabinets had opened. Some of the earthquake-proof stuff that we had done had not worked, and we had a mess.
I was up at 3:45 in the morning, you know, take a quick shower, get ready for work. I was running about maybe 5 to 6 minutes early that morning. I headed out, jumped on the 14 freeway southbound. All of a sudden, it was just like the car just started to shake. Like it was like if you were on waves. All of a sudden, there was this just big cloud of dust that was starting to envelop me. As I came out of this cloud of dust, I could see on the road that there was some bumps in the highway. Kind of opened my door to look down to the road because at first I couldn't see, you know, any of the lines. All of a sudden I started hearing this sound. It was almost like a gun going off. Then after I heard it, then I would hear like, you know, rocks hitting, you know, cement and rolling. And I thought, what the heck is that, you know?
Interstate 5 had collapsed at the 14 freeway interchange, taking the life of one LAPD officer with it, and leaving the communities of the Santa Clarita Valley literally cut off from the rest of Los Angeles.
I basically was the last guy across that 14 freeway before it fell down.
I jumped in my car and with the kids and went immediately over to City Hall. Had I known how bad City Hall was, I would have never walked in, and I certainly wouldn't have walked in with my kids.
City Hall was inspected, as were all the bridges and roads. I mean, that was a big effort. And it was discovered that indeed the integrity of the building had been compromised. And so the city, shortly after the quake, was what we call red tagged. And so what we did is we moved everything middle of January, end of January, out into the parking lot of City Hall, and it was cold. I remember that.
This building, which is probably pretty well built, sustained considerable damage inside. At first, we thought we'd be able to fix it, that it was cosmetic. As we began to look inside just a little bit more, we found out that it was more than cosmetic. There was structural damage, and we believe we're going to have it repaired in about 75 or 90 days, and it'll cost us somewhere in the vicinity between $3 and $4 million. Well, we started operating probably around an hour after the earthquake hit on that morning.
Yes, this is where we coordinate everything. All the information comes into one central spot so that we can deploy resources and where they're needed the most.
Adele was wonderful. Her heart was in the right place. She was very competent. People looked up to her and had so much responsibility and really had all of these contacts with FEMA and all these other agencies that I remember she got promoted almost like a battle time promotion during the earthquake, and that was really well deserved.
When I first came to the city, I met Adele. She was still kind of in the thick of recovery, if you will, and putting together the programs that we still we're still utilized today. Adele was our community services manager, community services superintendent. worked with us for, I think, just under 20 years or so. Wonderful lady. She knew a lot about emergency response, emergency preparedness.
So I went up to the transmitter site. Everything was intact other than no power on. And then I drove back down the 4 or 5 miles over to Sierra and Soledad, walked in the radio station, and our morning announcer was already there. Edison got the power on at the transmitter site within the 18-hour period, not at our studios. So our morning guy and Barry McKeever, so AJ Morgan and Barry McKeever went up to the transmitter site, jury-rigged a little portable studio that we used for remotes, and they started broadcasting, not having any script, not having anything in their heads.
It was constant that we were needing to provide information because this was, the newspaper would come out, but it would be, the next day, and the radio station really was a lifeline for people.
That was the only way people were really getting information, at least information that wasn't a day old.
Everything was so fluid and information was changing very quickly. Don't forget the internet wasn't around back then. There was no social media. So we were it.
They became the psychological crux of the whole community. They became the central point of the community and provided that vital information that really did make a difference to everyone.
The trailer park seems to have been heavily hit, and also, I guess the biggest disaster, other than the obvious, is the fact that the gas lines were ruptured. Is that right?
That's correct. What happened is the number of the mobile homes fell off their foundation, and when that happened, the gas lines broke, and that created a fire in a number of different locations.
The road to recovery was long and somewhat treacherous. We just didn't have enough inspectors. I don't remember how many inspectors we had, but
We had a young staff. This was 1994. The city was, not even 8-10 years old yet. And so we had a young staff, both in age and just in being at the city. Many who had never worked for a city, and so they sort of were forged in fire.
On the financial side, I think it took us about 14 years to get through the FEMA process to deal with all the issues that came out of the Northridge earthquake in terms of recovering from that. But it really, I think, ingrained in the culture of not only the organization of the city, but also the community, the need for preparedness.
One thing that we did learn following the Northridge earthquake was that earthquakes really are survivable. With lots of planning and preparedness, which are simple steps that can be taken ahead of time, it truly does make a difference. Another thing that makes a difference is the building codes. Our building codes in Southern California are a lot stronger than other places so that we can survive earthquakes.